Hey y'all, it's Kim. So I don't know if y'all have seen this clip with Donald Trump and the president from El Salvador, this Nayib Bukele. Anyway, he was on with Tucker Carlson. It's probably been almost a year ago, maybe 10 months, but I watched the entire thing. He's actually got a really good head on his shoulders and seems like a very good leader. So there, of course, there's the controversy of this Abrego Garcia dude that they say was illegally deported and all this other stuff. But I mean, I've got two of the Supreme Court decisions here. The Supreme Court of the United States on application to vacate the orders issued by the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, and then there's this one, the Supreme Court of the United States. Kristi Noem, Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, versus Kilmar Abrego Garcia on application to vacate injunction entered by the United States District Court for the District of Maryland. I'll put those in the description because it's like a lot of that legalese stuff and whatever. I'm just going to show y'all some clips of some stuff. Seems like pretty cut and dry case to me as far as the guy was a El Salvador like actual citizen, even though he was living here illegally. But you can read the court case yourself. Let's listen to Donald Trump and Bukele take on Caitlin Collins from CNN, and then we'll show you the Stephen Miller clip on X. So let's watch this.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at TV.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him? And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant. Because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court's
to get
asking
him back?
to,
Is
And
that-
what was the ruling
is that your
in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it per the court can only be directed to him.
I asked.
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
Presidente
what is
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States. Right?
It's always
How can I
CNN.
how can I return him to the United States? Like, if I smuggle him into the United States or whatever, then of course, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
you can release him inside of Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world to the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world. And that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal,
Yeah.
released into
I mean, there's a
So
fascination.
They would love it. but
Yeah.
They're sick, these are sick people. Mark, do you have something to say about?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that.
Hold on, because I want to see something. Let me see if I can do Control F on this form. Okay. What was it? Executive. Isn't that what we consider it? Executive. The hex holding about the availability. Executive action. Well, I was trying to look through here because I saw something like that, but I didn't read the full thing. Sorry. Where is it? Where's the decision? Oh, dissenting. There's the dissenting. Well, Supreme Court. Deny the upgrade of Okay, well, anyway, let's just finish that because I can't find it right away.
Simple. End of story.
But that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump, thank you very much.
Wow, yeah. She just wouldn't shut up. But what is it? Hold on, let me look at one more thing here. Foreign policy. Foreign terrorists. Oh, that's page 1. Policy. I'm just trying to find what in the world? Maybe that means that word is not in here anywhere. Yeah, maybe not. Well, that's okay. Oh, this I think is the one. That's page 7. That's all right. I'll just, for right now, we'll watch this other clip with Stephen Miller on Fox News. Let's see what he has to say.
Number one, DOJ said a federal court cannot compel the executive branch to engage in any mandated act of diplomacy or incursion upon the sovereignty of another nation. So your argument is that you don't have to bring him back home, but will you?
So I want to correct, I hate to do it, Bill, but I got to correct you on every single thing that you said because it was all wrong. First, we won the Supreme Court case. Clearly, 9-0. A district court judge said unconscionably that the president and his administration have to go into El Salvador and extradite one of their citizens, an El Salvadorian citizen, so that would be kidnapping, that we have to kidnap an El Salvadorian citizen against the will of his government and fly him back to America, which would be an unimaginable act and an invasion of El Salvador's sovereignty. So he appealed to the Supreme Court, and it said clearly, no district court can compel the president to exercise his Article 2 foreign powers in any way whatsoever. DOJ called me after that Supreme Court ruling, and they said, this is amazing. We won this case 9-0. We are in excellent standing here. So this has been portrayed wrong for 72 hours in the media. They said the most a court could ever compel you to do would be to facilitate return, which would basically mean if El Salvador voluntarily sends him back, we wouldn't block him at the airport. We would put him back into ICE detention, and then he would be deported either back to El Salvador or somewhere else. The Supreme Court said that is the most the government can be expected to do. So we won the case handily. The misreporting on this has been atrocious.
Okay,
Secondly,
I appreciate
he was
the
not, no, Bill's
clarification, that's the
important.
case.
He was not mistakenly sent to El Salvador.
Okay, so do you still
He's
believe
an illegal
he is a
alien
member of
from
MS?
El Salvador. Hold on, this is important.
Mhm.
In 2019, he was ordered deported. He has a final removal order from the United States. These are things that no one disputes. Where is he from? El Salvador. Where is he a resident and citizen of? El Salvador. Is he here illegally? Yes. Does he have a deportation order? Yes. A DOJ lawyer who has since been relieved of duty, a saboteur, a Democrat, put into a filing incorrectly that this was a mistaken removal. It was not. This was the right person sent to the right place. Now, some have said, well, but he had a thing called a withholding order. So a withholding order means you've been ordered deported, but an immigration judge is saying you cannot go back to a particular country. Here's the thing. If you are a member of a foreign terrorist organization, you cannot have a withholding order. Since he's in MS-13, there is no withholding order. Furthermore, the gang that he is accused of being persecuted by doesn't exist anymore in El Salvador. The 18th Street gang is gone. So you have an illegal alien from El Salvador. Bill, where are we supposed to send the illegal alien from El Salvador?
You haven't even
To
allowed
what
me to
country?
ask you a question. Are you convinced he is still a member of MS-13? That was your original charge.
Yes. Not only, but here's the thing, Bill. Yes, but here, not only am I convinced of it, not only is El Salvador convinced of it, Bill, he's an illegal alien from El Salvador with the deportation order. So his only options in life, Bill, his only options in life are to be deported to El Salvador or to be deported to some other country. That's it. He has a deportation order. So, Bill, you tell me, what country should we deport him to? Tell me, please. Tell me.
So Marco Rubio on Sunday morning said this. On Saturday night, another 10 criminals and
Uh-oh. Oh, it cut off. Well, let's look at this. Okay, so this is 4 pages. And this is Supreme Court of the United States. I'm trying to figure out which document he's referring to or which court case he's referring to, but this says Kristi Noem, Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, et al. Versus Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, et al. Like, I guess, whatever. On application to vacate injunction entered by the United States District Court for the District of Maryland. This is from April 10th, 2025. On March 15th, 2025, the United States removed Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia from the United States to El Salvador, where he is currently detained in the Center for Terrorism Confinement. The United States acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. The United States represents that the removal to El Salvador was the result of an administrative error. The United States alleges, however, that Abrego Garcia has been found to be a member of the gang MS-13, a designated foreign terrorist organization, and that his return to the United States would pose a threat to the public. Abrego Garcia responds that he is not a member of MS-13 and that he has lived safely in the United States with his family for a decade and has never been charged with the crime. On Friday, April 4th, the United States District Court for the District of Maryland entered an order directing the government to facilitate and effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7th. On the morning of April 7th, the United States filed the application to vacate the district court's order. The Chief Justice entered an administrative stay and subsequently referred the application to the court. The application is granted in part and denied in part, subject to the direction of the order. Due to the administrative stay issued by the Chief Justice, the deadline imposed by the district court has now passed. To that extent, the government's emergency application is effectively granted in part, and the deadline in the challenge order is no longer effective. The rest of the district court's orders remain in effect, but requires clarification on remand. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. The district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. So this right here may be what they're referring to. And I'm just bringing the receipts, so don't come after me like, oh, that other stuff. No, the district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. Let's look and see what the word deference means, just so we're clear on all this stuff. It says humble submission and respect. So obviously, the executive branch, which should be the presidential branch, the courts are supposed to submit. So hold on. The executive branch of the United States government is responsible for enforcing and executing the laws made by the legislative branch. It is headed by the president, who also acts as head of the state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The executive branch also includes the vice president, the cabinet, executive departments, and independent agencies. So just so we're clear, it says, so right here, for its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. The order henceforth entered by the Chief Justice is vacated. So the order heretofore entered by the Chief Justice is vacated. So statement of Justice Sotomayor, with whom Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson join, respecting the court's disposition of the application, the United States government arrested Kilmar Armando Abrego in Maryland and flew him to a terrorism confinement center in El Salvador, where he has been detained for 26 days and counting. To this day, the government has cited no basis in law for Abrego Garcia's warrantless arrest, his removal to El Salvador, or his confinement in the Salvadoran prison, nor could it. The government remains bound by an immigration judge's 2019 order expressly prohibiting Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador because he faced a clear probability of future persecution there, and demonstrated that El Salvador's authorities were and would be unable or unwilling to protect him. APP to application to vacate injunction 13A. The government has not challenged the validity of that order. Instead of hastening to correct its egregious error, the government dismissed it as an oversight. Declaration of R. Sena in number 25C 951, whatever, blah, 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 document 11.3 P3. The government now requests an order from this court permitting it to leave Abrego Garcia, a husband and father without a criminal record, in the Salvadoran prison for no reason recognized by the law. The only argument the government offers in support of its request that the United States courts cannot grant relief once a deportee. Okay, so it says the only argument that the government offers in support of its request that United States courts cannot grant relief once a deportee crosses the border is plainly wrong. See Rumsfeld versus Padilla and blah, 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 Boumanin versus Bush. The government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence, so long as it does so before a court can intervene. That's ridiculous. That view refutes itself because every factor governing requests for equitable relief manifestly weighed against the government. Incan versus Holder. I would have declined to intervene in this litigation and denied the application in full. Nevertheless, I agree with the court's order that the proper remedy is to provide Abrego Garcia with all the process to which he would have been entitled had he not been unlawfully removed to El Salvador. That means the government must comply with its obligation to provide Abrego Garcia with due process of law, including notice and an opportunity to be heard in any future proceedings. Reno versus Flores. It must also comply with its obligations under the Conventions Against Torture, the Convention Against Torture, and other cruel and inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, December 10th, 1984. This is a treaty document. Federal law governing detention and removal of immigrants continues, of course, to be binding as well. So, I don't know. Federal law governing detention and removal of immigrants continues, of course, to be binding as well. So, I don't know which law are we gonna go with, you know. It says requiring C8 U.S. Code, whatever, 1226A, requiring a warrant before a non-citizen may be arrested and detained, pending a decision on removal. And then whatever this code is, in order to revoke conditional release, the government must provide adequate notice and promptly arrange an initial informal interview to afford the alien an opportunity to respond to the reasons for the revocation stated in the notification. But if he's here illegally, I don't see how you need to go through all this process. Moreover, it has been the government's own well-established policy to facilitate an alien's return to the United States if the alien's presence is necessary for continued administrative removal proceedings in cases where a non-citizen has been removed pending immigration proceedings. See U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Directive 1106.1, facilitating the return to the United States of certain lawfully removed aliens. In the proceedings on remand, the district court should continue to ensure that the government lives up to its obligations to follow the law. So, see, I'm not sure about this. I'm not saying that they're lying, but I don't know. Let's see, because I'm not seeing the court case that he's talking about where they won. Because it doesn't sound like this particular one is valid, but then over here, maybe, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to put those in the description. I wish I understood the law a little bit better, but, I only went to like 18 months worth of the community college. I did psychology, English, and had to go back to the dummy math because I don't do math well. But anyway, I'm gonna put those in the description. Y'all can read through them if you'd like. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm understanding all of this stuff because it's just too many pages. Like for this one, it's 25 pages. But I mean, if the dude was here illegally, he didn't have his immigration papers. I don't know why, we can't just send them back to where they belong. But anyway, y'all have a great afternoon. I'm gonna try to get some more stuff put up here. I mean, I was just trying to bring the receipts and trying to make sure I get it. Cause yeah, I mean, I was pretty ticked off about that Chris Van Hollen dude going to Maryland. It's like, or going to El Salvador from Maryland, but it's like, dude, you can't just put all your energy and effort into somebody that came here illegally and broke the law and did all kinds of stuff. But whatever. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Like, share, and subscribe. See ya. Bye.